I'm your host, Bradley Martin, and this is Clearing the Way, a resource for small business owners. Hello, humans. I am your host, Bradley Martin, and this is Clearing the Way, a resource for small business. I talk with sales and HR experts, other small business owners, and anyone else that can provide you with information to clear your way to success. My guest today is Jess Garda, owner of the Cheerful Balloon. Jess is a W&J graduate. She is a recent second place finisher at the I2E, or in I2E at Ignite. She owned a wedding and event planning business until the pandemic forced her to kind of make a few adjustments. She began the Cheerful Balloon in her home, sometimes out of Chicco. We would run into each other there, but quickly ran out of space. She joined Ignite and soon was able to move on to Main Street here in Washington. Cheerful Balloon creates eye-catching balloon decor, gifts, and designer partyware. Jess, thanks for being a guest on Clearing the Way.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start way back, and then we'll work up to Cheerful Balloon and all things along that line. But so it was in a post recently. You grew up all over the place.
Yeah, Army brat.
So where did you start? Where all did you live? I think you said in there 5 states, 2 countries. Where were you?
I was born in Fairfax, Virginia. That's where my family my mom and dad, for the most part, grew up.
Okay.
And then from there, I've lived in South Carolina. I've lived in California. I was actually there during the earthquake, during the World Series earthquake. That's one of my earliest memories is watching everything come crashing down in our house. Great first memory.
Oh, how old were you?
I was, 4 years old or 3? No, 3, I would say. When was the...
I have no idea.
Was it 90? So I was 4 years old. So, I mean, I have some earlier ones, but that's like my first real vivid one was like huddling in the doorway while it was all happening.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. That
so there's
is
that.
Interesting.
Like I said, Texas, multiple places in Maryland and Virginia. We were stationed back there a lot.
Okay.
And then twice in Germany.
Okay.
So 2 different places in Germany.
And was that how... Did that stop at us? Like, was that all before a certain age, or was that kind of your whole growing up?
That was all throughout. So then we were stationed back in Northern Virginia for my senior year. So I finished high school there and then started looking, I was looking for colleges and applied to different places. But at the time, my aunt and uncle were living here in Washington. We would come here every Thanksgiving. I just liked the place, and it was a good compromise of moving away from my parents, but still being close to family. So that's what brought me to W&J.
Okay. So, man, that's a lot of places before college.
Oh, the longest I lived anywhere before college was not even 4 years. So, and now I've been here almost 20 years. Yeah.
So that sounds pretty difficult, especially in those, like, I guess probably always. Elementary school, not as much, but like middle school and high school.
Email and social media. We would actually, back in the olden days when we would write letters to each other. But yeah, it was difficult to adapt, to make new friends.
Yeah, especially during those, like, people suck. Well, not people. Kids suck during those ages. I mean, they're
middle
brutal.
School especially, yes.
Yeah.
Middle school especially because middle school is when I moved to Texas. And that was one of the first elementary schools that wasn't a DOD school. So civilians were there too. So they, some people who had lived there all their lives. And I was the new girl who just moved back from Germany. And we're talking middle schoolers. So I was called a lot of names associated with having lived in Germany. It was rough.
That doesn't sound that fun.
No.
It does not sound fun. Okay, so all over the place. So let's start with, like, what kind of a student were you? And then I've got a bunch of other questions. Like, the moving thing is just, I'm sure there were a lot of issues there or challenges or whatever you want to call them, but I'm sure there was some stuff. But how were you in school? What were you interested in? Like,
I was definitely socially below the radar. Like, I'd sit with the first person who would invite me, and you were my new best friend.
Okay.
Like, it was just like go with the flow. School was definitely, I was book smart, so I was the burnt out, gifted, and talented student. That was me.
Okay.
So overachiever, straight A's.
Yeah.
Pissed if I didn't get the straight A's. It really wasn't until college that, quite honestly, I started slacking off. But
Okay. Well, all right.
Sorry, professors. But yeah, I was definitely, I don't know, it just studying and testing especially just came naturally to me, so I enjoyed it.
Okay. Were there any subjects in particular that you were interested in?
Math. I was actually a mathlete.
Okay.
So I would compete.
Huh.
Which was also in middle school.
Okay. Okay, so math was
more
the
ammo
thing.
there. Yes, math was a big thing for me. I liked the puzzle of it because so what we would do as mathletes, we take the speed tests where you were given 100 questions and you could see how fast you can answer them in a certain amount of time. And you learned all of these tricks and shortcuts and mnemonics to help you memorize how to do it in the fastest way.
Okay.
And so I liked that. I liked figuring out the puzzle of being the most efficient with answering everything. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. That is a kind of not a weird way to think about it, but like a much different thought of math than I guess maybe what like I would think of it. That's cool. Any other like activities or anything? I guess
theater was a big thing for me, especially later on.
Okay.
That seemed to be the first crowd. That seemed to be the first group of kids who were very quick to bring you in and come join us and come try out for this. So I wasn't very athletic or coordinated, so sports kind of intimidated me. And it was hard to get in as the new kid.
Yeah.
But for me, the arts, the performance arts, it got me out of my shell. I could kind of just pretend to be someone else and not be so insecure. And that actually carried on to W&J. I actually double majored in psychology and theater there.
Okay.
So
How early did you start that?
I started that in towards the very end of middle school because I was also part of it was I was an Odyssey of the Mind, so that had like an acting component to it.
Okay.
But then in high school especially is when I was in every single play in one way or another. That was my activity. That was my group of friends. I was full on the theater kid.
Okay. So I guess did you move at all in high school? Or were you
I did. The school where I graduated from, I started there in 10th grade.
Okay.
Yeah. And because the credits were weird and some didn't transfer, in 10th grade, I was still taking a lot of 9th grade classes. So most of my friends were younger than me.
Okay. Well, at least at that point, you had a thing that you could kind of like, that's your way into the new friends. Because before that, like, if you're not, sports, at least for me, they were always the thing. It's like, you've got something. I've got something in common with somebody, we're good. But if you don't have a ton of activities, until you find that, it's like, I have to actually make friends. Just like with middle schoolers, like the worst type of kids.
Right.
Okay, so good student, into math, into theater. Was there, okay, all good there.
Yeah.
Did you know what say psychology and
dual major in psychology and theater, yeah.
What did you plan on doing?
That
is such a strange combination of things.
I didn't intend to major in theater. I just so happened to have the credits because I enjoyed it so much.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
I went to study psychology. I wanted to be a therapist or social worker.
How early did you figure that out?
I think somewhere in high school, honestly, it was like because I was the therapist of my friend group in a lot of ways.
Huh.
And also, quite honestly, those with family drama tend to go in there's some idiom about like the students who study psychology are trying to figure out their own family. There's definitely some truth in that too.
Okay. Huh.
But yeah, and also there's the component to theater. You're always trying to suss out a character's motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they doing this? Who are they?
Yeah.
So that kind of went perfectly hand in hand with psychology.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that does actually make sense. That makes a lot more sense than okay. When did that okay, so you graduated double.
Right, and when I ended up with double major, I was trying to think of like how could I use both because I really did love the arts, the performing arts. So I ended up going into arts administration. So I was a fundraiser for nonprofit theaters.
Okay.
Yeah, so I spent about 10 years with Pittsburgh Public Theater, actually.
Okay,
and
so
that's how I got into events because when you're doing fundraising, you're planning donor parties and galas.
Okay.
So it just kind of grew from crunching data into that.
At what point was that just something that you discovered after you graduated, or was that like you found that as a path early on? Like how
it's
that
something
seems like
I didn't learn about until like towards the very end, like right before I graduated, because I honestly wasn't even sure what I was gonna do.
Yeah.
I had given myself just kind of like 6 months to figure it, like, a while to figure it out because I knew I didn't want to go get a master's in psychology. I just realized that like the therapist route was not going to be somewhere along the way. I realized that wasn't the fit for me. Also I realized that I was way too much in debt with tuition. So a master's wasn't going to work.
What about the therapist route what did you discover there that wasn't, or either about you or about the career path that wasn't jiving?
I realized I couldn't be an impartial person.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I realized that there's just a certain bedside manner and composure to being a therapist that was not my strong suit. And also just, I was totally okay with saying, yeah, that's just not me.
Yeah.
Let's figure out something else.
How late or early did you realize that?
About halfway through, I think.
Oh, yikes.
About halfway through. But I still studied it because I enjoyed the topic. I think about halfway through college, I kind of got a little lost there. And I realized that I wasn't studying this stuff with a career in mind. I was studying it just because I enjoyed it. And I was like, well, I'll figure out a career later.
Was there any thought of changing majors?
I didn't know to what. So I just figured.
Okay.
Right.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. That is, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Especially that late in, because it's like halfway through, and if you don't know what that other thing would be, it's like, yeah, I guess just finish in the thing that you're actually interested in rather than restarting. Like, that doesn't sound good.
And then when I graduated, I knew I was starting to think, because like I was thinking I could work for a theater. I don't want to be an actor, but there's still staff in administration that's involved. And it wasn't until really that I met my now husband where I learned that about arts administration and programs are out there, only because he had mentioned his ex-girlfriend was studying it.
Okay, well,
so that's how that happened.
It was a good idea. It doesn't matter who it came from. It was a good idea.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I that's how I ended up on the path for, at least for event planning.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so that you find out kind of late in college. Through college, were still good student. You mentioned you started to kind of slack off a little bit, but not like
mainly
seriously.
Just because of like family problems. I think that hit me hard. And then when I got lost and realized that I didn't really have a clear path of where I was going.
Okay.
And it may have been part of it, quite honestly, because during school age, as we do a lot of self-discovery, I wasn't doing a lot of self-discovery in school. I was keeping my head down, trying to catch up, trying to adapt to a new environment, trying to fit in.
Yeah.
Not really worried about who I was, trying to figure out who they wanted me to be. So I really was a late bloomer as far as discovering who I was, what my strengths were, and what I wanted to do in life. I mean, even as late as look how late into the game I've started the Cheerful Balloon. I mean, it just took a while.
Yeah, but maybe you were late.
I mean, right.
But like,
who's
if
time
you're
frame?
not moving, it's like whose time frame, but even if you're not moving around, I feel like high school and middle school kids, that's all they're doing anyways.
That's true,
like yours is amplified a little bit because you're the new kid, but like, I didn't know a lot of high schoolers or middle schoolers are like, yeah, I'm pretty secure in myself.
Right, yeah.
It's like, no, I know exactly who I'm at. No, we're all just trying to be who everybody else wants us to be because that's how you get to be cool or that's how you get friends or whatever. So it's like, sure, maybe yours was a little amplified, but I mean, and I feel like even college, probably a lot of the same. So maybe you were actually ahead of the game.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it was just my own harsh self-judgment. I just felt like everyone else had it figured out and I was just floating along. But
yeah. Okay, so you figure out therapist isn't for you. Was that like how did you figure out that you couldn't be impartial there? Like what was it just that like self-reflection, that trying to figure yourself out?
Yeah. I was just kind of realized it never was me. Like,
okay.
I think I misinterpreted my own desire to help people. And there's different ways to do it, but I'm more of an active person in that.
Well, and it's different when you're like, you mentioned you were kind of the therapist for your friends. It's a lot different with your friends than a random person.
Exactly.
Like, it's easy to be completely invested and it's less of an issue for you to offer advice or actions or whatever when it's your friends. And if that's the thing that was drawing you to it, it's like, well, this can't work as a job. I just don't have the desire to help as much as I thought. And if I can't be impartial, like, probably a good choice.
And I can't like separate myself. Like if I'm around someone who's upset, I'm going to feel upset for them. And I just realized if I'm doing that day in, day out, that's just
not going to be good.
No.
No. Okay. So you discover this new thing, at least new to you. Did you get a job right away? Were you specifically looking for that, or like what was that?
Yeah, it started as I did do a arts administration program through George Mason, and halfway through got an internship at Pittsburgh Public Theater.
Okay.
And it was just right place, right time. It just so happened that their entry-level person had moved on and they were looking to fill it.
Perfect.
So I took that on, was hired at the end of my internship.
Okay. So what did that job look like? What were you actually doing?
That was mainly entering in gifts, like donations, overseeing the mailings, making sure that their listing, the donor listing and acknowledgement was correct wherever it appeared. Okay. It was a lot of systems management, data work.
And how?
Mail merges, all the mail merges.
How did you, how was that for you as a, as tasks?
Fine with that. You know, it was, I love a good puzzle. I love a good puzzle. And this was another aspect of it. I was like, put me into the system. I'm going to figure it out. And we're going to figure out how to make the most of this database and the system we have. And, you know, there was still the psychology aspect of it too, because as I got that under control and it took me less time to do it, it opened up time for me to help with writing the letter. So then it's the psychology of what motivates people to give, how is that going to work, or finding the benefits that people are actually going to enjoy at giving certain levels.
Yeah. So was there any, like, I have a thought on this, but I'll ask it first. Was there a piece that, were you missing the creativity, or were you kind of getting the creativity? Like, it almost seems like for you, you can almost trick yourself into, like, the ability to try to think of creative ways to solve these puzzles. Right. That kind of gives you the creativity outlet that you maybe weren't getting with the theater.
Right. And I mean, I was still in the realm of creativity. I was still around creative people. And at that time, early on, it was before I had kids, I was still very much involved with the Whiskey Rebellion Festival and other smaller theaters. So I was still doing readings.
Yeah.
I was still on stage or doing the reenactments. So because I had more disposable time, because this was before kids, I was still able to find creativity in other ways. And then as my job grew at the theater and I was helping to plan events, that was another creative outlet for me that I really enjoyed.
Okay. And how long did it take for you to get to the point where you, like, okay, so how long did it take to get you to the event planning or whatever that looked like at first? And how did that happen? Like, was it just you starting to take on more and more and more, and then that was the next thing? Or, like, how did that come about?
Pretty much. It was kind of an organic growth. It was like, as I was still always the lower rung of the 4 people in the development, but that rung got higher and higher as, like, I got promotions, name changes, more tasks, raises, interns who answered to me, so I could pass on some of my easier tasks onto the intern sort of thing, and working more hand in hand with the corporate requests, the foundation requests. So I was still very much a support person, but I had my hand in a lot of different, my hand in a lot of pies, or however you say that. And wanting to do more and more challenging things as a result of that.
Were you throughout school and everything, were you more introverted, or, like, how? Okay.
Definitely.
Okay. So was the event planning, like, to me, that seems like something that somebody more extroverted would either be into or, like.
Not exactly, because day of the event, I don't have to socialize with anyone. I'm not sitting, like, I'm running things. I was essentially the backstage and stage manager for these events.
Okay.
So I didn't have to worry too much about the social aspects, which gave me the most anxiety. I had to make sure that everything happened on time, exactly when and where, and everything was in place.
Okay.
I had fixable, solid, concrete problems and answers.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yes.
Okay.
But then there was also the artistic, visual aesthetics of it too.
Yeah.
Which I very much, a lot of that was under the vision of Ted Pappas, who was the artistic director at the time, and Gary Weiss, who was my boss. Like, they took over a big role of that, but then slowly I got to give my input as well, which was always nice too.
Okay. So, then, yeah. That's cool. So, so you start that. Did you immediately, once you started the event planning, was that something that you were immediately like, I'm into this?
Yes.
Okay.
And it came at a time when pretty much all my friends and coworkers were getting married.
Perfect.
And then I got engaged. So there was a lot of me planning my own wedding. But then my other friends who say, hey, I need some help. You know how to plan events. So I started to help them and coordinate their weddings. And that's when I thought, hey, I can just start my own side business. And a lot of people start the wedding, like a wedding planning business that way. They plan their own wedding, and then it was kind of the same vibe.
Yeah.
So then I just started it was after Abby, my oldest, was born. So I started doing that in conjunction with working at the public theater, but then slowly went down to like part-time with public theater and more the event planning as we were trying to juggle family life. So
Okay.
demands on time it was a big
Yeah.
factor in all of that.
How quick? Okay, so did you start doing, or did you drop down to part-time to do more of the event planning, or was it?
It was a little bit to do more of the event planning, but also to do that at home with my daughter.
Okay.
And have more time at home.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
it was to have a little more control over my time because that job was far more than a 40-hour job. And it was in Pittsburgh, so there was the commute.
Yeah.
So it's just, I was hardly able to spend much time.
Okay. And, okay, so up to that point, was there any, I mean, it doesn't seem like it based on all of the things that you had been interested in up to that point, but like, was running a business, did any of your family have any of that?
No.
Okay. So you were starting from scratch.
Yes.
Did you have any idea what the hell you were getting into? What the hell you were doing? Was it just like...
I still don't, I feel like.
Yeah. None of us do.
No, I had no idea. And quite honestly, I don't think I fully envisioned it being a full business. I think I was still seeing it in the eyes of like a side gig, something to bring in money, a means to an end, something to bring in some money while I was home with my girls.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
Okay. But then as things got busier and...
Well, so how quickly, like, okay, so you start doing it and then eventually, sure, you did it to get more time with your daughter, but you had to have been doing it enough to like that was even an option,
right?
You know, like, so how quickly did that happen?
Well, part of it too was thankfully a very supportive husband who had the income to support both of us too, because we definitely took a cut.
Yeah.
Definitely took a cut. But I mean, over the course of, so that was 2016 when I started Jess Garda events. And I think over the next 2 years really is where it ramped up.
Okay.
And that third year, 2019, is when I really was like, okay, hit the ground running, full on. We're going to like brand. We're going to go out there. You know, I'd already had the networking together. And, you know, I was ready to hit the ground running with a full-time business.
Okay.
At that time, I was no longer working at public theater. I was working at Trax Farms. Well, I was working at Trax Farms, and then I was working with Pennsylvania Trolley Museum. There we go. That's right. I forgot about that. And then I was like, you know what? We're going to go full force into growing this business. And that decision was made in February of 2020.
Wonderful timing.
Yes.
So, okay. When what led to, like, obviously you saw some vision there, like this could work.
Yeah.
How was the decision, how did you come to the decision of, yes, let's try to do this full time and no more of these other things? Like, how did you think through that?
Well, I think part of it was trying to find a balance again with family life. Because if I was going to be spending all these these Saturday nights, all these weekends working away, you know, I wanted to find some time during the week to be with my girls. So part of it was, again, just trying to find a balance.
Yeah.
Which is never going to happen, but we always seek it.
Yeah.
And then it really was just, I found a passion for events. I joined it. I found something that like sparked joy in me. I saw, I found kind of my niche with the kind of couples that I liked to work with that set me apart from other planners, I felt. So I saw an opportunity and was growing it.
Huh. Were you mainly doing weddings?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I was.
Okay. And was there any, like, so with your background of kind of the, I guess that is like not charity events, but kind of like that with
So
the nonprofit
I was
events.
doing some nonprofit event planning too. Yes, it was mainly weddings that I was doing, but I was still doing some freelance nonprofit event planning, and I had plans to break into some of the corporate events too.
Okay.
We know how that went.
We know how plans work.
Yeah, especially in 2020.
Yeah. Okay, so you decide you're going full-time there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Beside the timing, like, nothing you can do about that.
Right.
Was there, with the running of that business, so like you decide up to that point you were in this, I'm doing this as a side hustle, I'm doing this as a thing.
Yeah, I was running that business all wrong.
Okay.
Like, especially now with everything I've learned with Cheerful Balloon, I was doing nothing right with that business.
Okay, so let's talk about that then. So what are some of those things that you realize now that are like, this was way off? Oh
man, I mean, like, I should have established an LLC. I didn't do that until much later.
Okay.
Okay. And I finally did again in February of 2020. Is when I established my LLC.
At that point, were you working mostly with friends and
well, no, I was doing other things too. So I was still like sole proprietorship, DBA, like all of that good stuff. So I mean, it wasn't terrible, but like I wasn't really thinking about my strategy too much. I was going from one job to a next. So I didn't have a formal strategy. I was all over the place with the finances. I didn't have a separate bank account for that. So it was like all in the personal account.
Okay.
Yeah. Just all these things that I didn't even know I didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's that like.
Until I started to get serious about it. Until I made the decision that this is going to be a business and.
Not the freelancer.
And not the freelancing. And that's when I realized just how much needed to be done. But then I hit the point of like, well, what's the point of even doing it if you can't have events right now?
Yeah. Well, okay. So you realize, like, what was your, okay. So you make the switch. I'm doing this as a job or not as a job, but I'm doing this as a business. I'm not a freelancer anymore. When you make that decision, was there something, like, obviously you wanted to do it full time now, but was there something that triggered because you could still want to do it full time and still be thinking about it as a freelancer.
Right.
Was there something that like pushed you over the edge to, I need to be taking this not more seriously, but thinking about this as a business? Like, how did you get to that point?
Well, again, I think it was, going back to the balancing. I realized that if I was going to be profitable with it, I needed to take on more events. But there was a certain threshold that I was willing to take on personally at that time. So my thought was, if I'm going to grow and take on more events, I need more support staff.
Okay.
Or even day of, like I can't be doing day of wedding with just me. I should be having another assistant with me just in case things go sideways and we need more people on site. So the moment you start thinking about bringing other people onto a team, you can't, as far as I'm concerned, you can't see yourself as a freelancer anymore because it's not just you.
Yeah.
It's a team you've got to take care of.
Yeah.
And if you're going to do that, you need a solid foundation to your business.
Yeah.
To make that happen.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm doing that all over again now with Cheerful Balloon. I'm taking a good hard look at this foundation that I've set because I've reached that point yet again where it can't just be me. But I need to know that whoever I bring on is going to feel secure in the job, like they know what's going on because I know what's going on, that everything legally and financially and et cetera is taken care of. Just getting my shit together.
Yeah. So that is kind of the catalyst for taking the event planning more seriously.
Right.
What were those steps? So obviously everything went to shit.
Yeah.
Quickly, but what were you doing? Like, what were your first steps there? So, okay, time to take this. Like, here's the problem. Here's the way to solve this problem.
Right.
Need to take it more seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Then what? Like, what was your approach to freelancer to business?
It was getting all my legal documents in order, filed an LLC, opened up a bank account, got the insurance together. Those were the first big three to make sure everything was set, made sure I was like, there wasn't any other permits or regulations or anything that was going to impact my business.
Yeah.
I mean, I already had like the website and all of that fun stuff.
Yeah, all the sexy stuff.
All the sexy stuff.
Yeah.
So it was that.
Yeah.
It was all right, well, if I'm going to see this as sustainable, how much money do I need to take in? What am I spending now? What's my overhead? Do I have a good CRM in place? Is there any other software that I need? It was doing some professional development. So I signed up for a few courses with other wedding planners who in the country who are reputable and like doing a kind of a mentorship program just to, again, kind of make sure on the business end that I was thinking about, you know, how are you positioning yourself?
Yeah. And did you, before you had gotten that, like the mentor, was there any other guidance that, like, obviously you have the internet, so that's a great place to start, but was there anybody or anything that you were kind of using as your guiding, like, okay, I'm going here for the information, and this is, I know that these are the first 3 or 4 things that need to happen.
Networking was a big thing. I mean, as you start planning events, you're meeting other vendors and therefore other wedding planners. And so just sitting down and having lunch or coffee with them, getting to know them. We worked out a great, you know, network there. In Pittsburgh, it's a blog called Berg Brides. Victoria runs it, and she's built a great community of event planners and wedding vendors of all types. And so having that network was great to pick brains and ask, hey, how are you doing this? And what about this? And also, you know, my former boss at Public Theater, because she had so many years of event planning experience. So I really, you know, trusted her advice when I was first starting out. And I mean, I really valued her guidance in getting started there.
Okay, that is helpful. Okay, so that good network, it's nice that everyone, or at least a lot of people, were kind of open to help there. I feel like.
Oh, the events industry in the Pittsburgh area is just fantastic.
That's cool.
I mean, it's a great community of people, business owners. And especially, I think, when the pandemic hit, they just got stronger. Okay,
that's cool. Because that is something, obviously, like, nobody has work at that point. So that can go it can go that way, where it's like, okay, cool, we're like, how are we going to figure this out? Or everyone is just against each other.
It was the community over competition too.
That's cool.
To a T. I mean, I remember joining, it was a Facebook chat with 5 other wedding planners when it first started, and we were giving each other updates about, like, here's the latest legislation or regulations. Here's what you got to worry about. We pulled our resources to make a spreadsheet of all the venues and what the different guidelines were when things were opening back up. You know, if someone was overwhelmed with trying to reach out and cancel this, someone else would say, hey, I've got some time. I'll make some calls for you. They were really cool. Just an amazing group of women.
That's cool. That's like, it's nice to hear that.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. This episode is brought to you by the City of Washington, Citywide Development Corporation. If you're a small business in Washington and you need another set of eyes on your situation, or you need help growing, you're not sure what's going on with the business, you can't figure out how to get out of the current struggles you're going through, you're just looking for ways to become a little bit more efficient, anything else like that, or if you don't know where to go next, you don't know who to find to fix whatever the problem is, reach out. The WCDC is a free resource. We're here to help. The links are down below. Reach out. Like I said, it's a free resource. Now back to the episode. That goes to shit. goes to shit. How long did it take before you started looking for, well, actually, were you looking to replace that, or did it just kind of happen?
It just kind of happened.
Okay.
So it's not like I was like, well, screw this, on to the next thing. I mean, I was still working with my couples to help them find new alternatives or postpone or just straight cancel. I was trying to find different ways to bring in revenue, whether it was like making workbooks that people could purchase, that sort of thing. And then slowly, as things were opening back up, I was still planning weddings up until 2021 was my last wedding. So I was still, but just very intermittently.
Yeah.
And after a point, I stopped taking on more clients. I was like, I'll just work with the ones I have.
Yeah.
I wasn't getting very many inquiries and new business because nobody knew what the hell was going to happen.
Okay.
So the balloon thing, honestly, was just me at the very first. It was just, I bought a hand pump and some twisting balloons off of Amazon because Abby, my daughter, saw something on TV about balloon animals, and she's like, "Can we make those?" And I said, "Okay, I'll buy this." And seriously, it was just like, we'll figure this out. We'll look up tutorials. She kept telling me different things to make, and I'd figure it out. Again, it was a puzzle. It was a fun little personal challenge. She just like, can you make me a butterfly? Can you make me a crown? Can you make me a flower? Can you make me Twilight Sparkle from My Little Pony? They got more and more absurd, and I kept making them.
That is such a wild way to. Well,
and then her
thanks,
birthday,
Abby.
Right? Yeah, it really. I tell her this all the time. She's the reason that this all started, because she just like. We were having fun with it, and it was making them smile. And as I started sharing pictures on Facebook, other people were commenting, "This is so cool. This is fun." And then her birthday came around, and we found ourselves in the position that pretty much every family was in, where you can't have friends over. You can't really have anyone over. So it's not much of a party, right? So I just bought one of those balloon garland kits off of Amazon again and just started decorating the house for her birthday, just covering it with balloons. And that's when I started having people say, "Can I just pay you, $50 to make one and just deliver it to my doorstep?" So I started doing the contact-free delivery sort of route. Yeah, that's how that all happened.
Okay.
It was with no intention whatsoever.
Okay.
So it was a creative outlet in a time where I wasn't getting it because there weren't any events.
Okay. So how long, like, at what point did you decide, or not decide, realize that this is, like, maybe something, like, obviously you got a couple people asking for things.
Right.
But, like, when that started to happen, did you think, oh, this could be a replacement, or did that still wasn't even a question? Like, you were still all in on events whenever they happened again?
It wasn't a replacement, but it was the
new side.
Not even new side. So I did a little market research this go around and came across an event planning business in Canada who their pivot was they were still planning events, like they were still an event planning company, but they started offering balloon services. So it was just like another service to the same company.
Okay. That makes sense.
And so I thought, well, okay, so this is something that I could phase in to get some money in for right now. And then when events pick back up, I'll probably just phase it back out because I'm still just one person. I can't do all of it, So I still offered balloons under Jessica Garda events and started, I think that really started in some sort of official posting it on the website and taking money for it through the business in like November, December of 2020. So I did a lot of like holiday arrangements. New Year's Eve was a big one where I did like the pop the balloon and the balloons come down because everyone was at home. So that really was, it took a few months for me to be officially like, I'm doing this as part of the business.
Okay. Okay. So, Okay. So when did you decide that needed to be, okay. So did you decide that it needed to be something different, or did Jess Garda events just kind of stop?
Once I realized when events started opening back up, I was getting far more inquiries for balloons than I was for planning.
Huh.
And at that time, I was doing other special initiatives. Like in February of 21, I worked with Asbury Heights for all of the seniors who were on lockdown, or senior citizens who were on lockdown. We gave them all little balloon bears. So I did like a, sponsor a grandparent is what we called it, I think. Okay. So it's like, you give me $25, we'll send them a balloon. So we did that for, I think it was well over 100 residents we ended up doing that for.
Okay.
Which is how I got kind of my first little bit of media coverage, because that was in the OR. And because of that, I started getting all of these requests for balloons.
Okay. So you're getting more requests for that than you are events.
Yes.
How did you
And planning events was just still so difficult.
Okay.
And changing on a whim. And I was burnt out from that. I was the joy was gone from that.
Oh, that sucks. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Then that makes that decision easier. Because I imagine first thought was you've got more requests for balloons, but I'm sure the price tag on the events is way higher. So it's like, even if you're getting more over here, it seems like you need a lot more of these to match one of these.
Right.
But if that love for this thing has kind of been destroyed, at least for the time being, just let's get away from this thing that's causing me so much heartache and so much just frustration, I'm sure. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And at any point did you okay, so maybe this is jumping ahead, but it doesn't matter. At any point did you come back to events or want to go back to events?
No, I think especially once the numbers kind of reinforced, what I was feeling about events versus balloons.
Yeah.
I think it was kind of easy for me to say, okay, we're going to phase this out. And so I stopped taking on new wedding planning clients. I finished off, my last one. And I think it was April 12th of 2021 is when because I looked this up on my old Instagram, because it's still up from Jessica Garda events, is where I said, it's not goodbye, but it's a new chapter. Yeah. Go follow me on the Cheerful Balloon. For all of my existing couples we've already talked, I will still be planning your wedding, but I won't be I officially stated that I'm not taking any new ones.
Yeah.
And phase that out.
And there hasn't been any real desire to to get back into that from
I
you?
Get that fix occasionally, because I still have planner friends who occasionally need day of assistance and whatnot.
Okay. So you still get
that great network of people, because I have a few friends who I will help them day of assist on their weddings, and they'll come and help me on an install some days. So we trade work with each other. So I still get that little fix.
Okay, that's nice.
Yeah,
that's nice. Okay, so in transitioning to Cheerful Balloon, you learned a lot from switching from freelancer to more of the full-time with the events. But that kind of how quickly did you shut down that? Not shut down, obviously we just talked about how long it took for you to actually shut down the business,
on paper, quite honestly, the Cheerful Balloon LLC did not exist until until last year, because I was still Jessica Garda Events LLC DBA, the Cheerful Balloon.
Well,
so there was a whole legal structure kind of transition that had to happen.
So when did how far along in you had switched at least your mind to, I'm doing this as a business. How far into that did you get before you stopped taking that seriously? And then did that just transition over into, okay, now this can all just be translated into Cheerful Balloon? Like,
honestly, I'm not quite sure. Like,
okay.
I don't think I can pinpoint a certain time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So as you transition now again into, okay, freelancer, business, now business is now Cheerful Balloon. Along that, we've talked about like you've learned a ton just in that transition. The legal structure of it, all of that, getting, I guess the accounting too.
Yeah.
Getting your bank accounts right. We talked about some of that stuff. That stuff is like a lot of the maybe the logistical things or like just the structural things that need to happen. Was there anything else that came up as you're transitioning there that that were hurdles that you didn't necessarily see or plan for or anything like that? Like you're doing this new thing full time. You're kind of selling products now, not services.
Yeah. It's easy to run a wedding planning business out of your home. Not so easy with the balloon business.
Yeah.
Not so easy when you're constantly filling up your downstairs basement, your garage, everything with product.
And balloons.
Running pumps, noisy pumps throughout the night. It was very tiring on the family and on the home. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm assuming that's when Ignite came into play.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. It was just getting to be too much. I mean, at first we were okay with me doing it because our downstairs is where the guests stay. And at that time, guests really couldn't stay with us because COVID. But after a while, we're like, no, we need to get our house back. And for me personally, it's easier for me to shift out of a home mindset versus a work mindset if I have an actual physical change in space. I realized that as I started working more, which is why I would go to Chicco so much when I was wedding planner. Or if I have to do emails, like it was just easier that way. So Ignite came into play because, if I didn't need a full-blown warehouse or anything. I just needed a few square feet outside of the house where I could store all the inventory, but then also fabricate everything.
Yeah. Well, okay. So when you're doing the events, you didn't have anything to keep.
No.
Like, okay. So was there like the learning or the switching from service-based to actually having to keep inventory and all of that? How was that? That seems like, I'm sure you've got some people that you're kind of reaching out to figure out how the hell to actually do that. But like, that seems kind of challenging to switch between, I don't have to worry about anything except probably a computer and a phone, to now, I have product that I need to fulfill these orders.
You're like researching balloon brands and equipment and best practices. And there's only so much, again, you can definitely learn on YouTube, but everyone has a different way of doing things too. So it's great that YouTube is out there and you can learn so many different skills. But if you're trying to pursue one particular skill, there has to be a certain point where you say enough with the YouTube, because you're going to learn so many different ways that contradict. You just finally have to stick with one and say, this is how I'm going to do it. I don't care how so-and-so does it. You have to just say, okay, this is how I'm going to go about it, and make up your damn mind.
Yeah.
So, like after a while, I was like, okay, enough with the YouTube. I'm just going to have to I know enough to get me started. I need to figure out my own way. I know the resources now. Like I've Googled balloon wholesalers. I know the brands out there. So now I just have to decide which ones I like and I prefer.
Yeah.
And just go from there. Like, I mean, it's great to look and see what the experts and the industry leaders are doing.
Yeah.
But in the end, your business is you.
Yeah.
So you really have to go with what works for you.
Yeah. Well, and you can you can research all day
Oh, yeah.
and keep researching
And it becomes a way of procrastination.
Uh-huh.
Because, like, no, you just got to make a damn decision, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you kind of go through that. How was like determining where you're going to buy things? Did you have to test a bunch of like how did you go about how did you go about all that?
It really was. Well, so now I keep a standard inventory. I've
Uh-huh.
decided the colors that and brands that I work best for me, that I prefer, that I can like stand by their quality. I've looked at what people have ordered and what are the most popular requests and color schemes.
Mhm.
But starting out, it really would have to be just wait for the inquiry to come in, see what they want, and be like, okay, I have to look up heart balloons. Where do I get heart balloons? Okay, you want this. Okay, I have to look this up. Okay. You know, just like it really was on the fly, tailoring what I purchased to what was being requested, letting the demand kind of dictate the supply.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that makes, I mean,
which made it hard to plan ahead. I couldn't take a lot of like last minute things because you had to have time for shipping and all of that.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure your pricing isn't as good either when you're doing it that way because you're buying small amounts of everything.
Right. Actually, it was kind of worse because I was getting small orders for like 5-foot garlands, but those have 4 different colors and 3 different sizes. So, and they come in a bag of like 100 balloons. So really, if you look at you know, what you spent on the supplies for that particular garland may not have been much, but really what you ended up buying, because you had to buy a bag of 100 balloons times 3 sizes times 4 colors. So it was a lot of upfront costs, definitely. More going out than in.
Yeah. Okay. That is difficult.
And when I realized that, that's when I realized I was going to at least start with like your standard Roy G. Biv colors, your rainbow colors, and a few specialty ones. That's when I decided, okay, I'll start with a standard stock.
Okay.
And purchase all of those so that I can just accommodate that.
Yeah. Okay. That helped, I'm sure.
That did help. Yes.
Okay. And at that point, all of your what types of customers were you working? Was a lot of like what were you doing?
At first, it was a lot of family and friends.
Okay.
Or friends of friends. Like people on my friends on Facebook would share my work, and then their Facebook friend would reach out to me.
Yeah.
As events started to open back up, it was really wonderful to have that friendship and that community of the events industry.
Yeah.
Because they gave me their full support. And it was just wonderful. The recommendations, the referrals that got sent my way. So that was kind of a big boost too.
Okay. Okay, so you've got inventory not figured out, but you're figuring it out.
Yeah.
You're out of your home. That probably helps a lot. So then we'll say, I feel confident in saying that, quickly move out of Ignite.
Right.
How?
And that's a big part thanks to Ignite.
Yeah.
Like I am, as I'm talking about the events industry, it's making me realize too, like another huge thing was the community here in Washington, like having those connections. Because the moment I was part of the Ignite group, you know, they started, you know, sharing my company and introducing me to other companies that worked with them. I got a number of corporate jobs through my connection with Ignite. So having that community is everything.
Yeah. What led to being able, okay, so it's time to move out. how did you figure out that you needed more space or that you could afford to move out? How did you take that next step? Like, how did you know that you were actually ready for that? Or did you just not know? It was just like, maybe this
I
is
knew
going to work.
what wasn't working. For as much as I loved being at Ignite, the actual space was not the perfect temperature and climate for the balloons. So I was starting to compromise my inventory.
Okay.
So I knew I didn't realize that until we hit the summer months, like the warmer months. And I just realized that just wasn't going to be sustainable.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, well, I got to figure out what my other options would be. Also, I was growing out of that space too. I couldn't contain everything in my little space.
Yeah.
So by that time, it was like, so if I do stick here at Ignite, I have to lease more space. And at that point, would I be paying for that? I could possibly find another space.
Yeah.
And we'll just see what's out there.
Yeah.
I wasn't even sure what was feasible, but I was like, let's just put it out into the universe, and shared my hopes and dreams with a few key people in the community who kept their eyes out for me. And that's kind of how that happened.
When you are looking for a space, were you just looking for basically a workspace?
I was just looking for a workspace. I wasn't even really thinking about a retail space.
Okay.
I was like, that would be super cool down the line, maybe like 3 years from now. But mainly I just need a place of my own that it can be on Google Maps, that people can start to find me, and eventually we'll take it from there. I was starting to envision like a party store and balloons, like as I started to grow the business and think about the plans for it. That definitely had become part of my overall goal and strategy for the business. But I did not think that was something that was a reasonable goal within
So what switched
the first year. Finding the space. The space dictated making that happen.
Okay, so
because
what about...
I came across the space I'm in now, and it was so affordable. And the location was fantastic, being downtown and, in my own hometown and place that I love, and right there on Main Street.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to have this space, I want a place that's welcoming for people to come in to pick up their grab and go options, the smaller creations. So I definitely wanted to brighten up the space.
Okay.
And so I was like, well, it became kind of like if you give the mouse a cookie. I was like, well, if I'm already updating the space to look nice, what if I had a few things for them to purchase? And what if this? And what if we did that? And it's also, honestly, because it probably was not, it may have still been too soon for me to start that retail end. But another driving force for making that decision was, I'm not going to be I don't want to be another vacant storefront on Main Street.
Okay.
It's like, if I'm going to be on Main Street, it's because I want to be a part of the community. If I'm going to be part of the community, I've got to do my job to try to be a good business and presence.
Okay.
So that was another motivation for getting that started.
Okay. So, and when you're... Okay, so you start piecing this thing together that ends up as you're selling all the things that you wanted to sell. How did you determine what was going to be in there? How were you finding vendor? Like, how did you shape your store?
And I'm still figuring that out, because some of the stuff that I thought was like, oh yeah, this makes sense, is like not moving at all. We live and we learn. But for me, it felt like, well, a natural progression. If people are buying their balloons, they probably want to buy their other party supplies too. So like, okay, naturally, I can get that. And that was really that piece. I did reach out to another business similar to how I envisioned my company going. I actually did reach out to her and asked if, I was like, I'm not going to ask to pick your brain, because so many people do that, and time is money and expertise is money. I'm willing to pay you, like, can we discuss a consultation fee where I can just like talk to you for 3 hours and just ask you all my questions and you just tell me your price. And we ended up doing that, and it was fantastic for so many different reasons. But she gave me a lot of great advice on to where to source the party supplies and other things.
Okay.
So, and then for the gifts aspect, that goes back again to my goals for being a part of the Washington community. I wanted, if I want people to support local for me, I want to do the same. So that was working with other vendors that I knew either through the farmers market or Ignite or other businesses I had been buying from personally for a long time, and asking them if they wanted to sell at commission in my store.
Okay. And did you, like, okay, so they're selling on commission. Was there any, how did you determine that was going to be the avenue versus buying, and then you?
Part of that came from my own bottom line and cash flow.
Okay.
Buying wholesale means a lot up front.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it also was it gives us a better way of figuring out what's selling, what isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And buying wholesale for a number of the other vendors, they said, well, my profit margin is already so small that if I gave you the discount you would need for wholesale, I wouldn't be making much. So commission, while I don't get as much from it, helps on the cash flow end while helping them on the profit side.
Gotcha.
So it was some not even negotiation, because that sounds too formal. It really was just like sending texts back and forth to these people, like, what works for you? Let's just figure this out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you've got your space. You're starting to shape the products there. Okay. So how has the retail side been? And is there, like, do you anticipate shifting to more of the, like, how do you think that is going to play out, or how are you hoping that it plays out, or what's the thought here?
I think what I did not anticipate is that, and this is a good thing, but in having a more established presence downtown, not only with more visibility, but being more connected and the sense of legitimacy it gives my business, that has really increased the balloon business side of it. Yet again, I'm seeing another boom in that. And that's where I've got to spend my time, which means that I don't have the time I thought I would have to maintain standard business hours, because a lot of that increased business is now from companies. So that's not a weekend install. That's a Wednesday delivery for their conference. So trying to find standard business hours that work. And unfortunately, what works for me may not work for the shopper, because I can't keep a lot of regular evening hours. Yeah. Well, and plus there's not a lot of foot traffic in the evenings on Main Street. So that is another... I'm allowing myself to say, okay, we're not going to have it figured out, and we're going to have to be flexible and allow myself to be flexible as we see what's coming this way. So I think the big thing it has brought to light is that it is time to grow a team.
That's exciting.
It's terrifying.
Or exciting.
It's exciting. It's also terrifying. And just, again, like I said before, like the sense of now you're responsible for these people. I don't take that lightly. So it is something that I don't want to jump into too hastily. But I need it personally now. Yeah. If anything, even, again, someone who can maintain those store hours and they could be blowing things up while I'm on deliveries, that sort of thing.
Especially when you don't have consistent hours, it leads to less
with less trust if, like, they don't know when you're going to be open. Yeah, exactly.
It's difficult to have, or to push the retail side and to get the sales that you probably could do if you're not consistent with it. Because sure, I need this thing, but how do I?
Right.
Maybe she's open this week, maybe not. Let me check, and then it's like you're going to be able to find it,
Right.
but it's an extra step or several steps to figure out, can I go shopping today for this thing that I need now? Where it's maybe easier for me to just say, okay, well, I can just get it on Amazon or something like that. It's like,
Exactly.
okay.
That convenience is no longer there, and that's the biggest driver. So
yeah.
yes.
Are there any other, like, okay, so growing the team is one solution there. Have you explored any other solutions to at least the retail side? Like, are there any other ways that you have thought about solving that?
Definitely. I think more, we've had the most success in the shop, most sales when it's event driven. I've hosted a couple of small vendor markets in there. Just had a couple of other vendors there that worked out well. Whenever we have the community events like the breakfast crawls, those have been fantastic for us. So, looking at a model where I'm having classes and workshops and events. So even if I can't, I have limited daytime store hours, I can still have the specialty evening hours to get people in and bring in revenue. And then also I'm developing more bundles, like themed packages. So, here's your unicorn themed party. You get all the party wear for it and the balloon garland and the specialty healing bundle. Set price, you're done.
Okay.
You schedule your pickup.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense because those are the events are good. Obviously, everyone sees more traffic during those, so that's good.
Right, yeah.
And having, like, hosting your own things, that's good too. It still takes your time, though.
Still takes my time. And so that would be another a position that I would be working with. So I been talking, quite honestly, an internship position of someone who can develop those events at like a WJ student to help with that would be possible. But yeah, that is something, again, would still take my time. So I don't have a set answer yet. I'm still trying to see what's going to work.
If there's because before you had, you were splitting the space.
Yes.
And I wonder if there's a way to do, I've seen, there was this concept it's more than a concept. I mean, it's a real thing that I saw in Cincinnati where it's this almost like a co-op type of thing where it's this shared space, but and in that case, everyone was kind of responsible for their own area. But I wonder if there's a way to kind of have it as hey, there's like 2 or 3 of us in here, and we all are selling. Like figuring out how that would all work. There's definitely some challenges there, but something like that could work where you've got 3 vendors in there, and
there's a place in Chicago. I don't know if this is their model now, but when they were starting out, it's very similar. It's called the Festive Collective, and it was stationery designer, a photographer, someone who designs her own clothing, and a balloon artist, and they all shared a retail space and like in the back half was their workspace. So yes, something like that could be interesting.
Yeah, finding the right partners there, like that. Everyone kind of has to be similar products or whatever, but that might be something that could work. Again, finding the right people and being able to cover rent and all of the challenges there for sure. But that could be a maybe not less risky, but less of a time burden on you that could kind of help solve or drive more of the traffic. And that would probably be good for everybody.
Right, yeah.
Hours are more consistent and everyone can split these hours or whatever. Like, I don't know how the hell that works, but an option.
Yeah, right.
Something to think about. Okay, so retail space, has there been anything that came up with opening or having your own retail space that has been a complete shocker to you that has, or like difficulty that has come along with that?
Not a difficulty, actually. One surprising benefit to it that I really hadn't considered is the number of people who now prefer to set up an appointment to talk to me when they're ordering their balloons.
Okay.
Before it's like all email. I send them mock-ups. I send them pictures of the balloons, but like it is such a visual thing, and people are so uncertain about what they want sometimes that I have more and more people setting up appointment times there in the shop to just like blow up and play with balloons and see what works and what colors combinations they like.
That kind of makes kind of like the first thing that comes to mind is like a carpet store. It's
exactly.
Like you can
I got my swatches.
Yeah.
I got my little. I do. I have books of swatches. They can come and pick them out if I don't have it in stock. It's like, oh well, I've got this catalog here. Let's look and see what I can order for you.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I've more and more of that lately.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure that maybe it takes a little bit more time because you have to be there, but you're saving a lot more of the back and forth time of like, oh, does this work? Because you're looking at something on a screen.
Usually I'm able to set those up when I'm already in the shop working.
Yeah.
Because, I'm still
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like I'm in the shop so many times. It's just, or like for so many hours. They're just not consistent hours right now because it is so very much dictated by what jobs I have and my customers' needs for that week.
When you're working there, like creating, are you also opening, or does it kind of depend on the day? Or?
It kind of depends on the day.
Okay. Okay. How much in advance do you know like what your hours are going to be for the week?
I have started doing on Mondays. Although I didn't do it this week. Oops. Posting something on social media saying here's the hours for the week, and it's typically some variation on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, like 12 or 11 to 5 typically, and then Saturday is the most flex, and that really just depends on how busy I am that day.
So you started all of this, like this path down having your own thing to create more time with family,
right?
how has that, like, and you even said like this strive for balance is never going to happen, but you're working towards it. How has that been, especially now that you've opened your own store?
Right. Well, now at least one of them is in school and the other one's going to start school. So that is part of it. Like they're at school, and so I have a little more time.
Yeah.
But I've also now created a business and a job where kids are more welcomed.
Okay.
My oldest, Abby, loves coming to the shop.
Okay.
She comes and she like prices things for me, sets up the display. She helps me blow things up. There have been a number of times where I've, as long as it's not like a big corporate event or something where, you've got to draw the line more. Typically on a baby shower sort of situation, if I give them the heads up and say, hey, I'm going to have my daughter with me, just so you know. But then I also make it a point to say, also, she's my hardest worker because she really is. She loves what I do. She's fascinated by it, and not just like the pretty balloon stuff. She wants to know about the business end.
That's so
which
cool.
Is so crazy. She's almost 7, and she asks me about, she's asked, like, what's your plan to hire people? What are they going to do? Mommy, you use the car a lot. Are you ever going to get a van for that? And
that's wild.
She was talking to me about impulse buys the other day. She's like, Mommy, I think you need to put these over by the register because that's something people are going to be waiting for you to tell them how much things are, and they're going to look over to there and go, oh, I need that. Kind of like what I do with candy when you go grocery shopping, Mom. I'm like,
what?
You're 7.
What?
I am so impressed by her.
Huh.
So, and I think I think what it comes down to.
That's so cool.
Is my view of balance and how I define balance has changed.
Okay.
It's no longer work versus family. It's more of how are they compatible and how do they work together.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that makes okay, so okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Um, that's cool. That is so wild.
Isn't she crazy?
That is so
I love
crazy.
it.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I got to make sure this business succeeds because she already wants to take it over.
Yeah, at 7.
Right.
Okay, so has there been so that's cool. That's pretty cool. Has anything else come up that has been a something you either didn't see or just a particularly difficult challenge to work through in the balloon side? Like in either in comparison or just something new just something new that's come up that is particularly difficult that you're working through.
Right. I mean, we talked about the challenges of just being a one-person team.
Yeah.
The demands and prioritizing. With the balloon industry itself, I mean, that industry alone poses its own unique challenges. I mean, there's so many people doing it as a side hustle. Just so many. So just charging what you're worth is harder when you've got people with very little overhead and also very little knowledge.
Yeah.
And again, aren't really serious about running a business.
Yeah.
You know, maybe they shouldn't be, but they don't think twice about charging rock bottom rates.
Yeah.
And then I've got to explain to someone why I'm charging, $20 per foot of organic balloons for just balloons,
Yeah. How do you deal? Because I feel like that's the same in a lot of those. Maybe I'll call it like the creative industry. Yours is a little different because it's a
service and a product.
Exactly.
It's this weird amalgamation of both. So you definitely have costs associated with it, but then you have to explain to people, you're not just paying for my costs. You're paying for my talent. You're paying for my vision. You're paying for my expertise.
Yeah.
And sure, maybe I didn't pay for a certificate or go to training, but I have poured my heart and soul and time and energy into perfecting this in a way that you're not going to be able to achieve with buying an Amazon kit and doing it on your own.
Yeah. Well, and the difference, like, I know you run into the same thing. Like, I'll use drones for an example, where it's like you've got people that are licensed, you've got people that aren't and are just doing it as this side thing that's like, if I can make a couple bucks, that's cool.
Right.
And it's difficult to, if the consumer isn't aware of the differences, I'm just going to go with what's cheaper.
Right.
So education there it can be difficult too, because you also, how much time are you going to spend educating? And if you're educating, like, is it even worth doing for somebody who wants the cheaper option? It's like, there's a lot of those challenges.
Well, and it's someone who has always struggled with self-doubt and imposter syndrome. Being able to work on building that backbone and be able to stand by, this is what I'm worth, and not budge on that is an exercise, but it's necessary.
How do you go, how do you do that? How have you gotten better at that?
I think for me, it's more of my own internal working on myself.
Okay.
Well, just mental health awareness month, it's going to therapy, it's working on yourself, it's taking care of yourself and knowing that you are valuable. But also it's knowing the industry and knowing what the top people are charging and knowing what the bottom is charging and deciding where you want to position yourself and knowing what your costs are and looking at those finances.
Yeah.
I think when you can back it up with numbers and some proof, it definitely helps.
Yeah, that's the thing that has, like, for me, it helps if I remove myself from it. And it's just like, here's how this works.
Right.
And these are the numbers. And I'm not making a decision. but this is.
Mhm.
Like, here's the numbers based on this. I actually have no say, so I don't need to feel like I'm not worth it anymore because
Right.
I'm not the one making the decision. This weird spreadsheet is.
It's also being willing to kill the people pleaser part of you.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean yet you're crap with customer service. In fact, quite the opposite.
Yeah.
Like if these are your customers, you're going to go to the end of the earth for them. But it's also the people who say it's just balloons and that don't see the value in it.
They're not your customers.
They're not my people.
Yeah.
I'm not going to enjoy working for them. They're not going to enjoy working for me. So it's best for everyone if we just say, bye.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bye.
How did you obviously you said like working on yourself helped you through that.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get to that okay, so actually, were you doing all of those things prior to this, like prior to Cheerful Balloon? And
the working on myself?
Yeah. And if not, what led you to taking that more seriously?
I love that question because it's something I just realized recently. No, I was not taking care of myself. I was just pushing through it, dealing with it the best I can, saying, oh, well, I'll just toughen up and, ignore the fact that I struggle with depression and anxiety and ADHD. It's all in my head. I've made it this long, 30 some years without medication or therapy.
Yeah.
I'm good. No. When I realized how important it was for me suddenly to build a business.
Okay.
When I realized that that was a priority, not just for me, but to set an example for my girls, to create some sort of legacy, to create business where I would be hiring and responsible for a team, I realized that the only thing that was going to keep that from happening was me.
Okay.
And if I wasn't serious about taking on that responsibility, it was time to just step away. And when I realized I was responsible for it, I created a checklist of things that I just needed to be more honest with myself about what I was capable of, what was holding me back, where can I improve. And one of the biggest things was just my own mental and physical well-being. Like that, there's a capacity there.
Yeah.
And I needed to make sure I was taking care of myself so that I could grow a business.
So when you're making this list, as if you're dealing with the imposter syndrome and all those things, I imagine that list included a lot of shit.
Oh, it was unreasonable.
How, like...
Well, it all goes back to, hey, that's a long list. And if I had to be honest and maybe look at it through a different lens, if it was someone else who wrote that list, what would I say to them? And quite honestly, it was like, girl, you need to go to therapy.
Okay.
You need an impartial third person to tell you that all this shit that you have here that says that you're not good enough really isn't the truth.
Okay. And so...
And give you ways for coping with it. It's also about having those healthy coping mechanisms. But like growing this business became a third child. And, I have two who are my actual children. So I just wanted to make sure I wasn't, and I was draining myself.
Yeah.
Everyone was suffering. And it's like, I make it sound like I'm doing this for the business, but no, I'm doing this so that I can see after my family and have this. It's for them in a lot of ways.
So you said that happened kind of like it just happened, like that kind of happened out of nowhere. Was there a trigger or a like catalyst to that, like to you making that realization, or was it just like, oh, it finally clicked that you were trying to create this thing for the future?
Well, part of it also was once I had the space, the retail space. It was visible to everyone. I couldn't hide.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
You can't hide anymore.
Yeah.
So part of it was definitely the peer pressure of realizing, like, I can't disappear into the night and act like I never wanted this. I can't. This sounds so doom and gloom, but I can't hide my failures now.
Yeah.
And they're going to happen and everyone's going to know, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But
peer pressure can be an interesting motivator.
Right. But it definitely, I felt added pressure in a lot of ways of like, okay, well, it's time to really be serious about this. And if I say I'm going to do it, I need to follow through. It was holding myself accountable.
Yeah.
I put myself in a position where I had to hold myself accountable because the rest of the community was now going to hold me accountable.
Yeah. That's interesting. So what's kind of strange, not strange about that, but just something about that is that even that, though, is still a like this, I don't know if it's the people pleaser or that like trying to fit in thing, but it is that like, but that's a good, like, it can be a good motivator.
It's also a component of ADHD is like you can't, it's so hard to find the internal motivation that sometimes the only trick, the only hack is to create an external motivation.
I feel that.
So I did that. I was finding that I was like, this was a way to make sure I held myself accountable and I couldn't just say, I'm done.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the thing, it's like kind of whatever forces you to get there, whether it's the best way or not. It's like, it doesn't matter if it's the best way. It's like, it doesn't.
Who's saying it's the best way?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, it just is a way that you can trick yourself into doing better for everyone that is important to you.
I'm finding that so many experts, you know, with running a small business and what to do. Like, I'm a mother of 2 kids. I'm a woman. I struggle with mental health and ADHD. And I'm looking and comparing myself to what the best way is. And the best way was established by typically men with no kids who don't struggle with mental health. Yeah. So, like, who are you comparing yourself to?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then the comparison, that's another whole thing. It's like, that just leads you down all the other. I mean, I find myself in that realm all the time, especially with all the creative things. It's like it is so easy to find people that are absolutely incredible at things, and then it's like, yeah, but they've been doing it for so like why. I shouldn't be comparing to that. Like, I just started this thing, and it's like, oh, well, I'm not as good as that, so this sucks. It's like,
well, and then when you're still learning, too, that's something that I had to really be honest about, too, when I was starting to learn how to create all of this stuff. You can be inspired by someone's work.
Yeah.
But don't go recreating it. Yeah. And, you know, you fall into those those traps sometimes. And now I'm at the point where I've had to call out other people on Instagram saying, hey, you shared a picture that is mine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
pass it off as your work.
That is different than inspiration.
Yes. Yeah. That's no.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a little different than inspiration.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that has become more important, has the business side, like the mental health side of it, now that is being taken more seriously, has the business side become more, not easy, but like, have the stresses of that changed, or is it easier, or like how is that affecting the way that you're running the business?
It has opened up the opportunity to look at the business with a fresh light and really say, what's working for me, what needs to change, what do I need to thrive? Part of that answer is extra help. Part of that, I mean, I one of the first things I did when I started asking myself that was contract a virtual assistant who just helps me with things like answering emails, which can be really hard for me when I'm in like a depressive slump. That's usually the first thing to go is communication. So she's there as my fail-safe when those times hit.
Yeah.
So it's things like that, you know, maybe someone else would have, you know, made their first hire someone else. But for me personally, what I knew I needed in order to keep going with this was, the extra help with the administrative end.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that
And then it was, quite honestly, it was the I2E, that was something that program is something I constantly kept putting off because I thought I wasn't ready for it. The imposter syndrome kicked in, and for some reason I thought I was not worthy of that program. And I did it because I thought, well, I owe it to myself to do this, and to be also just to be able to admit that there was a lot that I did not know and was doing wrong, and to just be fully kind of like brutally honest with myself of what my shortcomings were and how to go about that. And that program helped a lot with that realization.
Yeah, because a lot of that stuff, it's easy. I mean, it's with the business side, it's with everything. It's sometimes it's so easy to just kind of stick your head in the sand. It's like, oh, if I don't look at it, it's gone. It doesn't exist if I don't look at it. Where it's like, there's problems.
Yes.
You got to deal with them.
Right.
Like, you can't just keep burying your head because they're out there. Like, they just keep growing. If you don't focus on them now, they're going to be way worse in the future. And in the business case, it's like if you decide to ignore all of these things and keep ignoring them, in 2 years and 5 years, whenever you have to look at them, those problems are going to be massive. And it's the framework of the business. So it's like, if that isn't set up solidly, if you've been ignoring it for 8 years or 4 years or 2 years, recovering from that is going to be significant. That is going to be way more uncomfortable than dealing with it now.
Right.
But it is easy to just stick your head in the sand and just say, oh, I'm good. It's good. I'm not worried about it. And it's whatever. But
well, and it's another example of me putting myself in a position where, it created more of a pressure to hold myself accountable, because that program, again, like, you had homework, you had to be there every week, you had homework, you had to do this, you had to deliver. So it was just another external motivation to actually get the shit done.
Did you ever notice that before? Like that you not require, but that outside accountability helped you?
I mean, it's probably why I was such a good student.
Okay.
Because tests and deadlines and due dates were my thing. But if everything's like, oh, willy-nilly, do it on your time, and it's the internal motivation that always kind of lacked.
Okay. Did you?
I did that, and then I worked 9 to 5 jobs where I was given tasks.
Yeah.
And then to become a self-starter. Not only in there's being a self-starter in a job, and then being a self-starter in a whole business where the world is your oyster and anything could be, and you just have to make the damn decision, and that paralysis is so real.
And that, okay. Yeah, that all makes so much sense. I feel all of that so much.
And it's odd how I keep reading these statistics about, such a large percentage of small business owners and entrepreneurs struggle with ADHD or with mental health. And it's this really cruel double-edged sword about certain aspects of that make the self-starting and wanting to create something so true and important to who we are, but then also is the reason it's holding us back from doing more with it.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay. We've covered a lot.
We took a tangent, sorry.
No, that's just all good. That's all good. No, that's all, I think that's all helpful. Okay. So that has helped you a ton I'm sure obviously in the business side, but also outside of business.
Yeah.
It's going to be super helpful.
Extra self-awareness is never going to hurt someone.
No, not generally.
Yeah.
As long as it's real, not the...
There's self-awareness and self-consciousness. They're two different things.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else important that we haven't covered?
Oh, golly.
That you think you want to cover? or that you think is important? I feel like we've covered a lot of the super important stuff. We've been going for an hour and 40 minutes. So
yeah. I think the ability to pivot.
Yeah.
The importance of community.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm sure there's going to be stuff that comes up, and I'm sure in a year we can do this again, and
that'll be
we'll
fun.
see where you're at, and what else has come up. But until then, where can the humans of Earth find all of your things? And is there anything else we need to know before we go?
So my website is thecheerfulballoon.com. I'm located at 50 North Main Street in Washington. And on Facebook and social media, you can find me at the Cheerful Balloon Co. because everything else was taken.
It happens.
Yeah, right. Slow to the punch.
Yeah. Those will all be linked below. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
If you have any guests or any topics that you would like to see covered, reach out. My information is down below. If you got anything from this, if you have a friend that could learn anything from this, share it with them, leave a review, comment, do all those things are super helpful. Thank you for coming on. This was fun. I feel like we've been trying to do this for a while. And
I know, right?
Finally, we got it done. So thank you. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Thanks for listening, watching, wherever you're consuming this. I'm your host, Bradley Martin, and this is Clearing the Way, a resource for small business owners.